Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a really fascinating moment in global collaboration. The Tokyo 2010 Global Mission Consultation. Think of it as sort of uncovering the story behind this massive coordinated effort.
Yeah.
And connecting with every single people group on Earth.
Yeah.
Those unique cultural, linguistic communities that make up our world.
Absolutely. And Tokyo 2010, it wasn't just like another meeting, was it? It was very deliberately echoing history.
Right.
It was the centenary of the Edinburgh 1910 Missionary Conference. So a chance to look back, see where things stood, and I think crucially, forge a path forward globally.
And what a scale we're talking about. Over 960 delegates. From 73 countries, all gathered in Tokyo. And these weren't just, passive observers.
No, not at all.
They were key representatives, right? From this huge network, think leaders of big international organizations, smaller community groups, representing just a vast number of people dedicated to cross-cultural connection.
Yeah, the key players.
Exactly. So our mission for you today is to really get under the skin of Tokyo 2010. Understand its core goals, what made it unique, and the kind of lasting impact it's having, on how people connect and build understanding worldwide. We'll be using insights from Young Cho and David Taylor's work, making disciples of every people in our generation.
Great source.
Yeah. So you should prepare for some maybe surprising facts about what was driving this whole global initiative.
Okay, so where should we start? Maybe looking at how Tokyo 2010 deliberately mirrored some key things from that Edinburgh conference 100 years earlier.
Good idea. There were definite parallels.
Very intentional ones.
Right from the get-go, just like 1910, the delegates in Tokyo, they were there as the official voices for their organizations, their sending bodies.
Yeah, the heads of agencies, the decision makers, big international networks, smaller local initiatives, all represented.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, talking shop. It mirrored 1910 in its focus on identifying and reaching what they called the final frontiers.
Which we'd probably call the least reached people groups now.
Exactly. Those communities with very little or maybe no real connection to like the broader global networks. Tokyo 2010 really wanted to renew that push.
Makes sense. And another crucial bit for both meetings was this drive for better synergy, right? Working together.
Yes. In Tokyo, just like a century before, a lot of effort went into figuring out where organizations could collaborate better.
How they could be more effective together. So that many hands make light work idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for something this massive.
Totally. And what's really interesting is the language link. In 1910, they talked about reaching the unoccupied fields.
Right.
Tokyo 2010 built on that.
Yeah.
Participating agencies actually made concrete commitments, sending teams focusing on community building, specifically to people groups where basically nothing was happening yet.
So that ongoing cooperation after the conference, that's a clear thread connecting them.
Definitely. Engaging those unengaged peoples.
Yeah.
Direct legacy.
Okay, so moving beyond just where to connect, Tokyo 2010 really dug into the how and the why, didn't it? They brought in this distinction between breadth and depth.
Yes, that's key. Breadth is pretty straightforward, reaching every single people group, geographically, ethnically, all of them.
Covering the map.
Right. But the Tokyo Declaration put a lot of emphasis on the depth part. This went way beyond just initial contact or sharing some information.
Also.
Well, they stressed the need for a fundamental shift in how a new believer sees the world, aligning it with a broader biblical understanding, not just a quick connection, but real worldview transformation.
Ah, okay. Deeper than just surface level.
Much deeper. And this transformation wasn't just about personal beliefs either. The Declaration talked about changed lifestyles, ethical conduct based on core principles, and applying these principles everywhere in government, economics, health, science, even like creation care.
Wow.
The idea was this ripple effect, transforming individuals, communities, even whole nations, really holistic.
That sounds like a much broader vision compared to earlier meetings. That focus on deep transformation feels like a real evolution from just outreach.
It really was. And you see this evolution captured perfectly in their watchword for Tokyo 2010.
Which was?
Making disciples of every people in our generation. That phrase packs a lot in. It shows a really shift in understanding over time.
Okay, let's trace that. It does tell a story. Edinburgh, 1910. Their call was the evangelization of the world in this generation.
Powerful, bold, focused on getting the message out, within their lifetime.
Then Edinburgh 1980 shifted slightly.
Yeah, subtly. A church for every people by the year 2000. That brought in the crucial idea of planting local, sustainable communities within each group.
Right. building something lasting.
And then Tokyo 2010 comes along and weaves it all together. They kept the generation urgency from 1910, kept the people group focus from 1980.
Got it.
But crucially added making disciples. It wasn't just contact or presence, it was the ongoing process. Teaching, guiding, nurturing deep understanding and application.
That word disciples. It seems small, but it changes everything.
It really does. It reflects that much deeper understanding of the task. It acknowledges that just like dropping off information isn't enough.
Needs to follow through.
Exactly. A sustained process of growth, integrating understanding into life. It echoes what we just said about the depth focus.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. You mentioned the leadership shift.
Yes. Tokyo 2010 wasn't just looking back, it was a turning point in who was leading the global conversation.
How so?
This was the first major gathering of its kind, primarily planned, organized, led, and funded by the majority world mission movement.
And when we say majority world,
Yeah.
we mean Africa, Asia, Latin America.
Precisely. Those regions that have seen incredible growth and energy in their own global outreach efforts.
Which is a huge contrast to Edinburgh 1910, where non-Western involvement was minimal, right? And no leadership roles.
Absolutely. Even by Edinburgh 1980, representation was better, but leadership was still largely Western.
But Tokyo 2010 flipped that script.
Completely. The numbers are striking. Around 74% of the delegates and a similar proportion of the leadership came from the majority world.
Wow, 74%.
Yeah. It just vividly shows how the global missionary landscape had changed by the 21st century.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the energy, the growth in different parts of the world. A clear shift in the center of gravity for global collaboration.
And this change in perspective brought new priorities into focus. One really standout aspect of Tokyo 2010 was specifically including the secular peoples of Europe as a priority frontier.
That does jump out.
Yeah.
You usually think of Europe sending, not being a primary focus for outreach in that way.
Exactly. There was this apparently very moving presentation by Stefan Gustafsson.
Huh?
He laid out the challenges facing European societies, the church there, and the response from the delegates, many of whom, remember, represented the results of past European missionary efforts in their own countries, was profound.
How so?
They actually began to intercede, to pray for Europe. It was this incredible moment of reverse mission, you could call it.
Wow. Those who'd received support now offering it back. That's powerful.
It really is. And what hit home even more, apparently, was many majority world leaders recognizing similar secularizing trends starting in their own countries.
So it wasn't just a European issue?
Not at all. It just hammered home the need for that deep discipleship piece we talked about, actively nurturing and passing on understanding generation to generation everywhere.
That's a key insight, isn't it? These trends aren't confined by geography. It highlighted the universal relevance of Tokyo's focus.
Absolutely. Now, thinking beyond the event itself, there was a strong push to build something lasting, a structure for ongoing work.
Right. Not just a one-off conference.
Yeah, the idea of a permanent global network had been floating around since Edinburgh 1980. The AD 2000 and beyond movement had been huge, but it had a built-in end date.
Okay.
So in 2005, a key figure, Ralph Winter, pulled together a meeting specifically to think about a more permanent structure.
And that led to?
That directly led to forming the Global Network of Mission Structures, the GNMS.
GNMS. Got it. And its first job?
Its first job was basically twofold. Help coordinate the planning for Tokyo 2010, and then, really importantly, steward its outcomes. Guide the implementation of all the ideas and strategies that came out of it.
Okay, so it was designed for follow-through, a framework for action.
Exactly. And similar to how Edinburgh 1980 operated, the different task forces at Tokyo 2010 were pushed to look ahead, set goals for 2020. The big question was basically, what steps can we take to really foster disciple-making movements among all the world's least reached peoples in the next decade?
And these weren't just abstract goals.
No, quite concrete. Take the media task force, for example. They came up with the 2020 Vision Partnership.
Okay.
The goal was to develop relevant, contextualized media resources for every least reached people group with over 1 million people by 2020.
Targeting the larger groups first for strategic reasons, wider influence.
Exactly. Their languages, their media often reach further. And that was just one task force. There were 18 of them.
18? Wow. Covering what?
All sorts. Training, intercession, crisis response, research, technology, linking up different mission associations, a whole spectrum.
So each group had its niche, its focus area.
Right. each one tasked with figuring out strategies for their specific area and, crucially, how they could all collaborate better.
So what were some of the specific actions the GNMS actually took after Tokyo 2010 wrapped up? What were their priorities?
Well, a big focus was on getting national and regional task forces going.
Okay, why?
The idea was to get a much clearer picture, country by country, region by region, of where efforts were already happening, and then develop targeted strategies for reaching those populations where, basically no one was engaged yet.
Ground level assessment.
Yeah, and interestingly, two big international agencies volunteered their own resources to help make this happen globally, kind of facilitate the process.
That's practical support.
Yeah.
Seems vital for making visions reality.
Definitely. Another key thing was setting up regular forums, bringing together international leaders, field leaders, the national mission coordinators.
Keeping everyone talking.
Exactly. Fostering ongoing communication, collaboration at all levels. The Mission Associations and Networks Task Force apparently had plans to start annual meetings pretty much straight away.
It sounds like they really grasped how important continuous connection in sharing info is for making progress.
They did. But, as they were planning Tokyo 2010, a big challenge popped up. Just a real lack of good, comprehensive global data on all these efforts.
Uh-oh. Information gaps. Like what?
Well, for starters, there wasn't even, a complete directory of mission agencies based in Africa or Europe.
Really? No central list?
Nope. And no global system for tracking where missionaries were actually deployed among unreached groups.
Done.
And maybe the biggest gap, no single agreed-upon list of the world's highest priority unengaged people groups.
Wow. That last one seems pretty fundamental if you're trying to coordinate a global strategy, doesn't it?
Absolutely essential. And Tokyo 2010 tackled that head-on by creating the last mile calling list, the LMC list.
Okay, LMC, what did that do?
That was a huge step. It combined data from the three main existing people group databases, Joshua Project, Ethnologue, World Christian Database, to give a much more complete picture.
Merging the streams of data.
Exactly. And they even made the LMC list available online.
So not just knowing where the needs were, but having a shared understanding of that information across the board.
Precisely. And the GNMS ran with this. They started working on building a really comprehensive global directory, not just agencies, but training centers, resources, the unreached peoples themselves.
Creating an intelligence hub?
Kind of, yeah. The plan was to put a lot of this online for GNMS members. They even set up different membership tiers, to help connect leaders and resource people more directly.
So the big picture here, building a robust information network to actually support and guide the global effort.
That's it. And the ultimate goal, really echoing that whole tradition of global collaboration, was building this worldwide alliance. They were aiming for at least 2,000 organizations working together.
To reach those remaining frontier groups.
Exactly.
That is seriously ambitious collaboration. How did the GNMS see itself making that happen practically?
Well, they positioned themselves as the sort of nerve center, developing and managing a global strategy that covered the whole pipeline.
Pipeline.
Yeah, recruitment, training, deployment, and empowering new teams focused on that community building among the least reached. The target they set was ambitious. Full engagement by 2020 or 2025 at the latest.
Full engagement, meaning some kind of active effort underway for every group.
That was the goal. And the strategy was designed so existing organizations could see where their specific strengths fit in.
So they could contribute to specific points of the plan.
Right. Take ownership of certain components. And that would also make it really clear where the gaps still were, where new initiatives were needed most.
And it wasn't just top-down from the GNS.
No, not at all. Individual agencies were strongly encouraged to set their own visionary 2020 goals related to reaching the unreached. So the time right after Tokyo 2010 was meant for a lot of assessment, reflection, dialogue among leaders, figuring out how to move forward together most effectively.
Sounds sensible. Were there concrete commitments made at Tokyo?
Oh, yes. Very specific ones. For instance, a commitment was made to start engagement, evangelism, and church planting with 171 of the 632 identified unreached people groups over 50,000 population.
Within a specific time frame?
Within the next 3 years following the conference.
Okay, that's tangible. Anything else?
Yeah, also a commitment to send out over 1,200 oral Bible teams focusing on groups where learning is primarily through listening and speaking.
Tailoring the approach.
Exactly. And 85 agencies volunteered to do national surveys in their countries to get a better handle on local church access and distribution.
So definitely not just talk. Tokyo 2010s sparked real action, laid groundwork for a much more coordinated, informed global push.
Absolutely. I mean, summing it up, Tokyo 2010 was a really significant milestone. It updated that whole global conversation about connection, didn't it? Emphasizing both reach every people group, but also that deep transformative discipleship, the depth.
And the shift in leadership we talked about.
Crucial, marked a real change, highlighted new priorities, like Europe, and maybe most importantly, it built actual infrastructure, the GNMS, the data initiatives for ongoing collaboration, a more strategic future.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about
Yeah.
the sheer complexity, the scale of trying to connect globally.
Right.
And understanding these different efforts, the motivations behind them, it feels important. What parts of this massive effort resonate most with you listening in?
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What are the implications of a truly interconnected world, where knowledge, understanding can genuinely be shared across all communities?
Yeah.
What are those unseen barriers that still exist, not just in this specific field we've discussed, but everywhere? And how can collaborative efforts like the one we dove into today help us break them down? Something to chew on, maybe.